God, we say thank you for a lovely day that you have given us and that you have taken us through this day, and that your Spirit could lead and guide each and every one of us. We ask you for special guidance as uh, uh, the presenter will bring out the book of Daniel in the most simplified way, and so that we can understand it and share this news to those around us who haven't heard about the prophecies, and so that thousands can be converted in a day. Come and illuminate our minds and give the lecturer all your wisdom and understanding. In your gracious name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. See, now that you in South Korea, your voice is getting deeper now.
No, it's 12 a.m. in the morning, so I'm a little
Oh, I
bit
see.
slow. I'm half
Okay.
awake.
Right. Let me see. So, Trudy, are you sharing with me? Or no, I have info here
You
that
can
I'm going to
share.
start.
You
I did.
can share.
Okay, fine. Um, if you let me just see if I can just get into it here. Share screen. Everyone can see this, right?
Yes, I can see, Prof.
All right, here in terms of the book of Daniel, I think we spoke to this just in part, just to show that there are references of grace in the book of Daniel. As I said to you, grace has been given, and we find this grace in different parts of the Old Testament. In almost, I think, every book should contain it. Uh, some you probably will have to read between the lines. But here in chapter 1, verse 9, it says, God granted Daniel favor and compassion in the sight of the commander of the officials. So God gave the favor and the compassion to Daniel. And then you see in verse 11, but Daniel said to the overseer, whom the commander of the officials had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, please test your servants for 10 days and let us be given some veggies to eat and water to drink. All this goes with the idea of grace and mercy. And when you go further, you see how God had been gracious. And it says in verse 17, as for these four youths, God gave them knowledge and intelligence in every branch of literature and wisdom. Daniel even understood all kinds of visions and dreams. Then Daniel went to his house and he informed his friends Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And it says here in Daniel 2, verse 18, so that they might request compassion from the God of heaven. See, they know the type of God he is. And Jonah also mentioned that. You are a compassionate God. And that's why you wouldn't destroy the people of Nineveh. So they all know that God is compassionate. If we go further in 2 verse 48, it says, then the king promoted Daniel, and he gave him many great gifts, and he made him ruler over the whole province. Then also 3:16, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to give you an answer concerning this matter. If it be so, our God whom we serve he is able to deliver us, right? And he will deliver us out of your hand. Now, there again, the grace of God seems to come in all the time. And we find here further down, 9 verse 19, O Lord, hear, O Lord, forgive, O Lord, listen and take action. Sorry, I think there's someone playing on the piano, and it's going to disturb you. I don't know if this will cut it out, but I'll have to probably do this. Um, I hope there's nothing that you hear. All right, I'll just go further on. This is all part of the graciousness of God and just the type of person he is in terms of his nature. Now, we also just want to bring this is just a little bit of background, just a little bit of background information. It can sound a little scholarly, but just bear with us for a while. There are manuscripts of Daniel that's older than 2,000 years old. Now, we speak of the Bible, we speak of a long tradition. But we have manuscripts that are older than 2,000 years. And there are 8 fragmented manuscripts of the book of Daniel. They were found at the caves near the Dead Sea. And also, there was also another one found. It's in Daniel chapter 12, verse 10. We see that this is quoted in a thing called the Florilegium. And this was found in a cave. The Florilegium, I think it means like a group or a bunch of flowers. So these are all put together. So Daniel 12, verse 10. Does anyone know what Daniel 12, verse 10 has to say? I think I have it. Daniel 12, verse 10. And it says, many will be purged, cleansed, and refined, but the wicked will act wickedly, and none of the wicked will understand. But those who have insight, they will understand. So those who have insight, and in other words, those who've been searching, those who are interested in knowing what their God has to offer them, they will understand. All right, then we just go further. We have the abomination of desolation. These are different parts of the book of Daniel. We will come to this and still discuss this. The abomination of desolation is mainly the idolatrous, devastating, oppressive, persecuting power or invader of Israel. Now, when we speak of the invader of Israel, we're speaking of the invader of spiritual Israel. Now, let us not forget that Israel, as God's nation, now takes on a spiritual dimension. And that is with reference to you and I. For you are not real Jews just because you were born of Jewish parents, or because you have gone through the Jewish initiation ceremony of circumcision. No, a real Jew is anyone whose heart is right with God. God is not looking for those who cut their bodies in actual body circumcision, but He's looking for those with changed hearts and minds. And that is what is important, says the book of Romans 2:28 and 29, quoted by the Apostle Paul, is mentioning this. A true Jew is one whose heart is right with God. When we go over to foreign words in Daniel, now coming to the foreign words, here we're just trying to show you that the book of Daniel is like a fruit salad. It is, we would refer to it as eclectic. I think it's ECLECTIC, eclectic. That's a mixture of a variety of things. So you have this fruit salad where in the book itself, you will find words from different languages. You find words that come from Aramaic, find words that come from Akkadian, find words that come from Hebrew. There are words come from Persian. There are Greek words, and all these they form this book but even though it is written in Hebrew and in Aramaic, these words have found their way into that language, much like the English language. The English language has a variety of Latin words in it. It also has Greek words in it. It would also have perhaps Scottish, Irish, all the Germanic words. A lot of words coming from German. And then if you're South African, it also has some Afrikaans words in it. Words like apartheid, words like lekker. Lekker is actually also a German word, but spelled with a C. So these words you would find in the book of Daniel, and I'm not going to stress that too much, but I'm just going to show you a few. Here's one called Argevan. Argevan means purple or red purple. That is an Aramaic word. Or the word Ashaf. Ashaf means a conjurer, an enchanter, someone who can trick. Who's a trickster, you know. We have another word, Atun. And Atun, as we see it here, it means a furnace, you know, like the fiery furnace. That's the Atun. The Heichal really, is a palace or temple. And as you go down, you see all these different words coming from the Aramaic language. But then you have words from the Hebrew language. And here's one of them, Meltzar. Meltzar means an overseer. It means a keeper. It's not a name of a person. No, so unfortunately the King James had it recorded as the name of a person, Meltzar, but there is no such a person. It simply means overseer or keeper or God. And you have another word, Bira, which means a castle, a citadel, or a fortress. Then you have Persian words. They, according to this person who did his research by the name of Kitchen, I don't know why Kitchen is doing his research in his study and not in the kitchen. And he has words that he found, Persian words. Adar Gazer, which means counselor. Azda, which means promulgated. He has the word the satraps, which is Achashdarpan. You know, interesting words that they have. These words, these are not Hebrew words. You can see that if you take the first one, Adar Gazer, there's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 consonants. No. Hebrew only has 3 consonants. So you can see that these are not Hebrew words. They could have been borrowed, yes, but they basically have 3 or 2. So all these words, as you go down, they are then Persian words, and there are 19 words of them. Then you have Greek words. There are 3 Greek words in Daniel. And someone's got to answer me here. The first one is the word kitaris. What word do you hear? It can be kitaros, or kitaris. So if you hear the word kitaros, what are you thinking of? Don't you think of a guitar?
Ja, in Afrikaans ons sal praat van die gitaar.
That's it.
Ek het vir my pa 'n gitaar gekoop.
That's right. So a guitar. And that word is right there in the book of Daniel. And that's how it's written. Kitaros. So this is how it's pronounced. Kitaros. Kitaros. And that is actually a zither or a lyre, or a lute. These are instruments. These are um, of the musical instruments, but with strings. So that's where we have our word guitar from. Okay, how about this one? This second one here. You might know this word if when you hear it. It says psalterion, persanterine, psalterion, psalterion, psalterion. That is the word, the psalter. You know, Psalter. Psalterion. That's more like a harp or a triangular. And that's another word that's also found in the book of Daniel. How about this one? Symphonia. 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 In music, you know that term. A symphony. Symphony. And that's a bagpipe or double pipe. Others suggest that it's a harmony or a concord. Okay, so it just shows you the different words you find in Daniel. Now you get the issues in Daniel, and the book has been under attack, but Christ made it plain that when you see the horrible thing by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, let the reader take note. So Christ put his seal on the book of Daniel, that this book has value, that this book is a book that is a guide for the end time. So they would then attack the book, but they don't really get far with it. So there are differences also expressed by comparing the Greek Septuagint with the Semitic text and so on. So that is what we will still discuss. Another thing is that the dating of this book is also under attack. They give a date when the book of Daniel was written. It brings up issues where many of the scholars give it a late dating. If you give it a late dating, then it has a problem. If it gets a late dating, then it refutes the fact that God is the powerful executive administrator and director of world history. So it cancels the idea. It refutes it. It destroys the idea that God is that powerful executive administrator and director of world history. Because now they're saying, no, the book was written after. It's supposed to be, the book was written before the prophecies, but they say it's written after the prophecies. Then it's not a prophetic book anymore. Now, here we see one example, for instance, in part, the book is also interpreted today in the minds of some scholars as tales. They call it tales. The stories in the book of Daniel. How they can call it tales is really beyond any Christian. No Christian would take it as tales. A tale is a narrative that relates the details of some imaginary event. You're just imagining that this thing had taken place. They speak of the tale of Abraham Lincoln's dog, tale is something that's false. It's a lie. It's a rumor. It's a piece of gossip. It is something that is untrue and is often malicious. So, you cannot refer to the stories in the book of Daniel as tales. Christ would not have approved that it is the book of Daniel that must be studied. Let the reader understand what's happening in that book. He would have told us, no, that is a tale. That book must not be written, or rather, it mustn't be read. But here, according to a person by the name of J.J. Collins, J.J. Collins is a world-respected professor. He is at Yale University. According to J.J. Collins, he says Daniel 1 verse 1 to 21 is a coherent narrative that may have been composed ad hoc as an introduction to the tales. He also states that the apocalyptic visions of Daniel 7 to 12 show a high degree of continuity with the tales in many respects, and notably the interest in dreams and visions, and the insistence on the sovereignty of God over all human kingdoms. So if we as believers in the God of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, if we should conform to this idea of tales, of imagination, of fiction, when Christ validated Daniel's authenticity, then we are discrediting God as the source behind these experiences of the book, and it is totally unacceptable. So with Collins, I have personally met him. He is from Yale Divinity School, and I have challenged him in open discussion. He's a very learned man. He wrote a very, very book, one of the biggest, thickest books that I've seen on the book of Daniel. But my challenge was not on these tales. I challenged him on the four kingdoms, because he had the first kingdom as Assyria, and the second one he had as Media, the third one was Persia, and the fourth one was Greece. Those four kingdoms of Daniel chapter 2, he ended with Greece. So I said to him, but how can Assyria be the first when history records Babylon is first? And how can you have Greece as last? What happens to Rome? Where does Rome? I'm sorry? Hello? Someone's mic. Yes. So he doesn't seem to like challenging, but I wasn't being nasty or funny. He's now speaking to a whole group of professors and scholars and so on. So I said, man, that's a bit worrisome. It worries me that you referred to Assyria as the first kingdom, 605 BC, when we know history records Babylon. And that fourth kingdom with this dragon with the great iron teeth and so on, there's no description for it except Rome. It cannot be Greece. Greece falls in as the third kingdom because the Medes and the Persians, they were formed as one. So, but he becomes aggressive, if you challenge him. Nevertheless, it's men like J.J. Collins, who's a theologian, but he speaks of tales, and that we do not accept at all. So for the the young believer, I believe every sincere student of this book, like Daniel and like Daniel's friends, to all of them, there is a challenge to meet. When you study the book of Daniel, there's definitely a challenge that you must meet, just like Daniel had challenges, like Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah had challenges. There's also a promise to be fulfilled because the promises are given, but it must be fulfilled and you must be able to test them and see it. And then there's also a dream to be realized. For the young person who studies the book of Daniel, there's a dream that you must realize. And this dream is formed in what you understand about how these other young people have performed and what was their relationship with God. And then there's also a standard to be upheld. You know, Christians have a high standard to uphold. And this is what Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, what it's all about. You see how they uphold the standard. And there's also finally a victory to be won. So there are rewards when you do perform, when you do the things that God wants you to do, and so on. So for any Christian, I would say the book is valuable. The book is prophetic. The book brings out the history. The book brings out the reality of what had happened. But the book is a challenge for young people because Daniel and them came round about the age of 16 when they were taken into captivity. And from that age already, they have proven that they are judicious young men, men that could be trusted, men upon whom the king could actually depend, but greater than that, the King of Kings could depend on. And that is what makes it so marvelous. Now, in terms of the introduction, before we go on, I might have had someone who had a question. I couldn't see. I didn't look at your faces, so I just heard some chatting at the back. There was no question, right? Should I go on?
Yes, please.
you proceed.
All right. Now, the introduction where God supports 4 judicious young men in Babylon's royal court. The message is that God's concern is for the Jews, the atonement, the temple, God's concern for young people, and also God's concern for individuals. And round about the year 606 BC, you have the commencement of Jerusalem's 20-year siege. And here we begin to read into Daniel itself, Daniel chapter 1, and we read from verse 1. And this is what it says. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and he encompassed it. He besieged it. So he took it over. And he's been there 3 times already, where he took over Jerusalem. And then they took all the utensils, the vessels, and so on, and they transported it all the way to Babylon. Now here, the commentary, King Jehoiakim is directly connected or linked with Nebuchadnezzar in chapter 1, verse 1, because he was the king of Judah. Now, Judah is the kingdom of Israel was divided into 2. The northern part was Israel, and the southern part was Judah. But that's the whole of Israel. So it was divided. So this is where Jehoiakim was then king of Judah. Nebuchadnezzar came from Babylon, and he then besieged this city of Jerusalem. The chronology is, Daniel is using the accession year of counting time periods. So when we say the accession year, that is the year that he ascended to the throne. That is his accession year, the year that he ascends to the throne. That is where we're going to start counting it from. So the chronology is that the first official year of the reign of the king, it begins with the first New Year festival. And that celebration is after the king's accession to the throne. This is now where he now just gets in to be the new king. And this event in chapter 1 of Daniel is therefore the accession year of Nebuchadnezzar and not his regnal year. His regnal year means when he starts reigning as king, much like King Charles. I don't know if it's the same. I haven't looked much into the history, but if they first have an accession year where he gets onto the throne, and then his regnal year is when he is now going to begin to reign. Some of them would not reign directly when they get into the day when they start. But then it's only with the regnal year when it is counted. All right, so Jeremiah applied the non-accession year plan, and he dated the first year of King Nebuchadnezzar in harmony with the fourth year of Jehoiakim, who was the son of Josiah. That we will still discuss. That is not so critical now. But now here the king's name, and this is Nebuchadnezzar. You will see his name is in Babylonian, it is called Nabu Kuduri Utsur. He's got a very interesting name, and I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. There are 15 letters there. Nabu Kuduri Utsur. And therefore, there are translations that would bring it out as Nebuchadrezzar. You must have seen that in the Bible, some of the Bibles. Nebuchadrezzar. And others have Nebuchadnezzar. For those who have Reza, it's simply because of the double R here. Nabu Kuduri, Nebuchadrezzar. That's why they have the double R. Nebuchadrezzar. It's an R and not an N. So, but that's not a big issue there. It's just that when you see it in another Bible, especially, I think it's the Revised Standard Version or so, you will see Nebuchadrezzar. There's no issue. It is still right because they're just taking it directly from the Babylonian. So that is his name. And it says that at that time, Nebuchadrezzar conquered the whole area of Syria and Palestine. And for 21 years, Nabopolassar had been king of Babylon. Nabopolassar is the father of Nebuchadrezzar. So Nabopolassar is his name. And then it says Nebuchadnezzar was the fourth dynasty ruler of the old Babylonian Empire. So he was the fourth one. Ruler of the new Babylonian Empire, and that's from 605 till 562. And then we just look at a few things here. We're not going to go through all that. There are references given, textual references, and so on. And this is just the point that I made, that the name Nebuchadnezzar has a different orthography, a different spelling besides Nebuchadrezzar. All right. So the interesting part about this king is that he seemed to have had power. He was the ruler of the then known world. So when we go over to verse 2, we see there Nebuchadnezzar's father, Nabopolassar, dies. We also see Daniel is included in this first deportation when they were brought in as captives. And then Nebuchadnezzar's reign as king. It starts on 6:0. Yes. All right. So we go directly into Daniel chapter 1, verse 4, where Daniel allows no middle course. So he says here that you can all see, right?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
All right.
Yeah.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, Prof.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
Prof.
All right. It says young men. That is what we see here with Daniel and them. Young men without any physical defect, but good of appearance and having insight in all wisdom. Now, this is how they were brought in as captives. Good of appearance, having insight in all wisdom. They were endowed with knowledge, understanding, and their understanding is based on academic learning and competent to serve in the king's palace. So they had all these qualities, and also to teach them the writing and the language of the Chaldeans. The king assigned them a daily portion of the rich food which he ate and of the wine which he drank. Nevertheless, they were to be educated for 3 years, so that at their end they may stand before the king. And there were among the sons of Judah Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Now that's your, if you just give their names that they were given, it's Belteshazzar, it is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now the chief of the state officials gave them names. To Daniel, he gave the name Belteshazzar. To Hananiah, he gave the name Shadrach. To Mishael, he gave the name Meshach. And to Azariah, the name Abednego. But Daniel resolved, he decided in his mind that he will not make himself impure. He will not defile himself with the king's food, his delicacies, or with the rich wine which he drank. And he therefore sought favor from the chief of the state officials that he might not make himself impure. Now, in verse 9, it says, Now God had made Daniel to be an example of kindness and compassion before the chief of the state officials. And the chief of the state officials said to Daniel, I fear lest my lord the king, who appointed your food and your drink, should see that you were in poorer condition than the youths who are of your own age. So you would endanger my head with the king. But said Daniel to the overseer, whom the chief of the state officials had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Now here in verse 11 is where it says, but Daniel said to what is his name? He said to a person by the name of,
Who are you
have
speaking
you
of? The
forgotten
king?
that name? Can you see it in your
The king?
Bibles?
Nebuchadnezzar? Or you're not speaking of the king?
How does it read in your Bibles?
Where's that?
Didn't he speak to Melzar?
Oh, that's the leader or the overseer. That's right.
Yes. As I
And
said to you, this name, there is no such a person.
And you say the King James Version has it as a person's name,
Yes, they made it the
whereas
name of a person, but
it's a massive
you
mistake.
can never, not with an article in Hebrew, the
Correct.
Melzar. You cannot do it like that. So Melzar is not a name. It was a mistake by the translators. He is actually just the overseer. That's what he is. Melzar, the overseer, or the guard, the supervisor. So, but he said Daniel to the overseer, whom the chief of the state officials had appointed over Daniel, over Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. He says, please test your servants for 10 days and let us be given vegetables to eat and water to drink. And that veggies there would be things like sprouts, be seeds, etc. This is what he has asked for, and this is what they would live on: eat and water to drink. Then let our appearance and the appearance of the young men who are eating the king's delicacies be examined by you, and according to that which you see, deal with your servants. Then he said, so he listened to them in this matter and tested them for 10 days. But at the end of the 10 days, they looked better in appearance, fatter in flesh than all the young men who were eating the king's delicacies. Then the overseer took away their delicacies and the wine of which they were to drink, and he continued giving them vegetables. So they continued with their pulse, their vegetables, but that is the word that is given as Zerohim. Zerohim. And that Zerohim is what we have as sprouts, as seeds, and also as vegetables in general. But it says, as for these 4 young men, God gave them knowledge and insight in all writing and wisdom. See, with the 3, they were 3 as one unit. And God gave them knowledge, He gave them insight, and this knowledge and insight is what He gave them in all their writing and in all their wisdom. But He gave Daniel something more. He gave Daniel understanding in all visions and dreams. And it says, now at the end of the days, when the king had instructed to bring them in, the chief of the state officials brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar, and the king spoke with them. But out of them all, no one was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Daniel means God is my judge. Hananiah, from the word Hananiah, God is gracious. Then you have Mishael. Mishael is actually a question. Who is like God? And then the last one, Azariah, helped by God. So you
Isn't
see,
Michelle
all their
and Michael
name
the same?
is connected with God.
Sorry to break in.
And I'll just finish off here. Hence they
Okay.
stood before the king, and I'm finishing off here. And every word of wisdom or insight which the king sought of them, he found them 10 times better than all the soothsayer priests and the tricksters, the conjurers, who were in all his kingdom. Okay, you have to just speak louder because I don't seem to be able to hear you clearly.
Okay, yes. I just wanted to know, Michelle, who
Mishael.
is Mishael, who is like
Yeah.
God. Isn't that very similar to Michael?
Yes, same name, same meaning.
Right. I thought as much. That was Jesus' name as well. Thanks.
Yes, Michael, the archangel. That's why the question comes up in that name: who is like God? And we know that Jesus is like God. So it is Mishael or Michael. So another thing that you need to just observe here is that it speaks of the state officials. I don't know if your Bibles read that way in verse 10 or even in verse 9, rather verse 8. Says, and he therefore sought favor from the chief of the state officials. Does anyone have that? Do you have them as state officials?
You mean in which translation?
Any of the Bibles you have with you?
Look it up.
Or don't you guys use the Bible?
Tell you now. I'll tell you now.
Human chapter 1. Then.
I have the NIV, Prof. It says, but the official told Daniel.
The official told Daniel, but that's not the that's not the word that I'm looking for. They were staying, and the chief of the state officials said to Daniel, "Does it just say official?"
In the NIV, yes, Doc.
Mine.
Okay, and what does verse 9 say? Verse 8. The chief of the state officials.
That one says again, the chief of the official.
Okay, it only has official. Okay, and verse 11. But Daniel said to the overseer.
Here we go. Then Daniel then said to the God whom the chief official had appointed.
Oh, all right.
As
But he's got him as God there. A God is right, or an overseer, a supervisor, or whatever. All
the
right. Any other Bible?
the KJV says in verse 9, now God had brought Daniel into favor and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs. And verse 11, it says, then said Daniel to Melzar, whom the prince of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah.
Okay, so you have prince of the eunuchs. So the Bible that you're reading there from, it says eunuchs.
Yes.
Now, Daniel resolved in his mind he would not make himself impure. And he therefore sought favor from the chief of the eunuchs. Eunuch is not necessarily the right term to use there. The word is the word saris, and it has two meanings. It can mean eunuch, or it can mean state official. And people often ask the question, was Daniel a eunuch? Was Hananiah a eunuch? And Mishael, were they eunuchs? Azariah, I don't think they were eunuchs. They were state officials.
Oh, so it was or.
I'm sorry?
It was or either a eunuch or an official. And that means that this translation has actually opted for the wrong one.
Well, the reason why they have, look, the meaning of saris is state official. When you work for a government or for a king, or it can be that you're a eunuch. Now, some of them were made eunuchs because the king was afraid that some of them might just sleep with his wife. So he made some of them eunuchs. But that word is sometimes misapplied if you take the name of Potiphar, Potiphar was at the time of Joseph. Potiphar was a saris, and then in his case, yes, he was a eunuch. Because
Lambert, you have a question?
yes,
Yes, I just wanted to find out the eunuch. Does it actually means like in the Afrikaans word of ontman?
ja, onmande persoon. That's correct. Was 'n onmande persoon.
Okay,
So
so Daniel wasn't
I can't
a
hear you
eunuch.
clearly. Sorry, let me just see. Again, try. Yes, Lambert?
Daniel, he wasn't made a eunuch, though.
No, I don't believe that. Daniel was a state official. And even the Ethiopian coming from Israel on his way to Ethiopia, he was a state official. He was working for the Queen Candace. And he need not be a eunuch. But we know in the case of Potiphar why he was a eunuch, and you can obviously just put two and two together, is because every day Potiphar's wife was worrying Joseph, and she wanted to sleep with Joseph because Potiphar is a eunuch.
Mhm. So that.
But Daniel and them, there's no record given that they were made eunuchs. First of all, the king trusted them in any case, and they were doing their work well. And you know, for them to go through that process of becoming a eunuch, it is severe, it is heavy. And according to the records, I think you can probably find it on the internet. You will see that the last person made a eunuch was in 1997 in China. And it was done by the sword.
Okay, so the eunuchs, it were only those that worked closely with the king himself.
Yes, and especially if they had to look after his wife and so on, or they work with the cherem. Cherem means to protect the king's bed. They were then the eunuchs. But in the meaning there can be either a eunuch or you're a state official.
So the Bible translators made a mistake there. That's a massive mistake.
Well, I wouldn't always say that they were, but it's just that they cannot always clearly ascertain whether it was a eunuch or whether it was a state official. Now, you have to look at other material like
Right.
with the Aramaic Bible, where you'll discover that Potiphar was a eunuch, and that was one of the reasons why he was worrying Joseph's, or rather why she was worrying Joseph so much.
Right.
That record is given. Also, the Ethiopian eunuch, he was working for the queen, but the record is that he had been a state official.
So perhaps the translators associated those who were captive as the ones that were supposed to be made into eunuchs.
Yeah, I suppose they would have that done with some of them.
But there's no proof for that.
Yeah, there's no proof for that.
Okay.
But just coming to the point here, it says Daniel allows no middle course. There's no middle course in terms of what he should eat, what he should drink, and so on. A decision was made, and that decision was made by him and the other three. So they were, and you will see that the three, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, when you go back to the Dead Sea Scrolls, it says Hananiah, Mishael, Mishael, Azariah, and Daniel. In other words, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah is one unit, separated a little from Daniel. So the three of them, they formed one unit, but Daniel was a little, that's why his position was also a little different compared to theirs.
Prof, are we saying that Daniel and the other three boys, they were actually third from the king, saying it's the eunuch, then the overseer, then Daniel and the boys?
Well, the eunuchs, they had the lower position. They had lower positions. But
Okay.
Daniel was third. He was given third position. He was third in command. And you know why he was third, eh?
Is it because of the dreams that he could outlay?
Yes, but he was given that third position because his father, the king, King Nebuchadnezzar as such, was actually second in command because his father was actually sick, and he was still the ruler as such until he died. And then only Nebuchadnezzar then became king. So at that time, Daniel was then third in command because Nebuchadnezzar was second, and then the third one, or rather the first one, he was sick at the time when Nebuchadnezzar was king. He was actually just performing in the place of the real king. That's
Yes,
why Daniel was third, because you're not going to find a second in between Daniel and the king. It's primarily because of the king's father.
Yes, I got that one.
All right. So this is what the basics, but there's just the commentary here that I need you to understand, that as you consider your future plans and your dreams for Christ and for humanity, ponder on the following words by Ellen G. White: whether you are in bondage or whether you are not. She says, "Dear youth, what is the aim and purpose of your life? Are you ambitious for education, that you may have a name and position in the world? Have you thoughts that you dare not express, that you may one day stand upon the summit of intellectual greatness, that you may sit in deliberative and legislative councils and help to enact laws for the nation? There is nothing wrong in these aspirations. You may, every one of you, make your mark. You should be content with no mean attainments. Aim high and spare no pains to reach the standard. The true object of education should be carefully considered. God has entrusted to each one capacities and powers, that they may be returned to him enlarged and improved. All his gifts are granted to us to be used to the utmost. He requires every one of us cultivate our powers, attain the highest possible capacity for usefulness, that we may do noble work for God and bless humanity. Every talent that we possess, whether of mental capacity, money, or influence, is of God, so that we may say with David, all things come of thee, and of thine own have we given thee. So this is very valuable in the context of chapter 1, that you must realize that everything belongs to God and it must be returned to him. So we have to return to him. And what Ellen White says is there's nothing wrong. He says some people are ambitious, they want to be great and so on. He says, but you must remember, you must be content with no mean attainments, but consider that God has given to you these capacities and powers that you must return to him. All right? So it must be returned to him. It's not a matter of you now becoming great. You get the respect and the honor, and as a result, you are just there for yourself and for certain people, perhaps your family or so. When you think about your life, your aims and your purposes in life, you must think God first. That's what is being said here. And this is exactly what the Hebrew boys did. They considered God, they put him first. And as a result of putting him first, God made things easier for them. They didn't even, I don't think there is any record that they have ever returned to Jerusalem. What we know are the tomb of Daniel, I know is in Babylon. And I actually have a picture of it, but that I must still find and show you, where the tomb of Daniel. Daniel apparently died beyond the age of 80 in Babylon. Never reached Jerusalem. All right, that's what I have for you. Any questions? Let me stop sharing.
Yes, I actually have two questions, Prof.
Yes.
The one is Jehoiakim, was he the king that God sent down a prophet to ask him to turn from his wrong ways? I believe, I don't know if it's
Yes, he was also one of those stubborn kings.
okay.
They were only, out of all the list of kings, I must actually show you the list of kings, how these kings operated. And they were evil kings, and they taught their sons to become evil. But only a few of them, I think it's Jehoiakim was probably one of the good ones, but there were only something like 4 out of the many listed kings that actually were good kings, but the rest of them were evil. And I say it's because they also read the records in the records of the kings of Judah and the records of the kings, the books of the records of the kings of Judah and the books of the records of the kings of Israel. They've been going through those records, and they would see how other kings had performed and all the money that they've used and how they used it and the wives and all that, and they went the same way, much like our presidents today. Oh, well, he had the privilege to use all that money, I will do the same. Instead of saying, no, let me put my head together and we will see what we can do for the country instead of what we can do for ourselves.
Okay, thank you for that one. The second one is Nebo, protect the boundary. The name of Nebuchadnezzar, does it have anything to do with prophecy in a special way by protecting God's people?
Nebuchadnezzar, that way where you said Nebo, no, it is more, it's a name that's more for a heathen king. So Nebo, and to protect the boundary, that is with reference to the king and to their gods. It is not with reference to our God.
Thank you for very much.
All right, sure. Literally the boundary stone. That's what it is. All right. Are we done? It's still much to come out of Daniel. This is partly into the text and partly a background to the text. We have to bring in a little bit of background, and then also we have to go directly into the text, into the biblical text. But just one important thing, just remember there is no person called Meltzar. It's actually, the Hebrew reads Ha-Meltzar, which means the overseer, the captain, the god. That's what he was. But he was not, it's not a person with a personal name, Meltzar. Where Ellen White got it from the Bible, from the King James, and therefore she also referred to him as Meltzar. Okay. Are we through?
Perhaps James has a question.
James cannot have a question if he didn't listen to anything, because we might have been speaking
James,
of Isaiah. Hello, James. Hello, James.
I can hardly hear, Prof. I think the microphone is very low.
Okay. Oh, you
Can
can't
you hear me
hear.
now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, now it's loud and clear.
All right. So we are done, James, and we will meet again by God's grace in a week's time.
I go.
Yes.
There was the road shedding here in Malawi, so it's just
Oh,
coming in now.
Okay,
sorry,
so
man.
you also have the disease in South Africa.
Here it's very common actually.
Okay.
Mm.
All right. We hope there will be no load shedding next week.
Come again?
Perhaps next week we can just start 1 hour or 2 hours earlier.
Yeah, actually.
Well, we will work out the time and then we
Yeah,
will forward it to you.
Professor Chalice,
Yes.
we will need to do it in the evenings because I will not be able to. I can't be able to do it otherwise.
Okay, I see. So that is okay. It's just because next week we're having a meeting again from 4 to, I hope it's going to be 4 to 5. And if it's an hour later, then perhaps we must just do it then an hour later. Would that be possible?
Yeah, for me it's fine.
Okay. Let me come back to you.
You're gonna kill me deciding Korea because it will be 1 o'clock my time. But all right, let's play by ear, especially with regards to the load shedding.
It's not only for that one time.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone.